find this to be entertaining, interesting, and answer some of your questions. I want everyone to know that I'm a resource. Don't hesitate to reach out and contact me regarding anything swim, bike, run. I'm more than happy to share my knowledge. And if I don't know the answer, I have a pretty good base of individuals that I work with on a regular basis, be it here, be it Training Peaks, Peaks Coaching Group, and various locations. So I've got a lot of contacts within the business that if I can't figure it out, somebody can. To start with, I'll just give you a little bit of background on who I am. My name's Dr. Ted Geddis. I'm basically a retired chiropractor. I spent 26 years, actually 28 years now. Wow, I'm old. 28 years in the sports medicine realm. I ran the conservative side for an orthopedic office for 25 of those years. Got burnt out on the apathy of patients and fighting insurance companies throughout that time. I got introduced to triathlon about 15 years ago and started competing, and then wanted to find another avenue for which I could kind of take my knowledge I learned in sports medicine and biomechanics and pass that along into an event that I love. So I got certified. I became certified about 6 years ago by USAT. I'm also an Ironman certified coach, level 2 Training Peaks certified coach, slow twitch racing and training with power coach, and training and Peaks Coaching Group power coach. So I'm pretty well versed in most things swim, bike, run. Bike and run are by far my strongest, but I'm okay at swim. Defer to the experts when it really comes to deep swim questions. So I've been doing this for quite a while. I love it. I geek out to it. So hopefully I don't go too deep or get off in the weeds because I can really go on tangents sometimes. What we're going to try to do tonight is kind of go into indoor training, break it down into 3 levels of indoor training, kind of how deep you want to delve or really dive into indoor training. What you kind of need to do that, how it works a little bit. A brief discussion on power meters, because there was one individual that wanted to talk about power meters. I'm really quite well versed in power meters. I've talked and met with most of the power meter companies out there when I was at Interbike a few years ago. So I'm pretty well versed in that, and then we'll open it up to general discussion. So with the unfortunate circumstance that we have going on right now is a lot of us have transitioned into indoor. Our season's kind of an upheaval. Where do we go? What do we do? We live in beautiful Cape Cod, but it's not always most conducive to be outside. And quite honestly, even throughout the summer, I spend most of my time in the basement training on my smart trainer. One, because I can get more bang for the buck. I can get a really good workout in a short period of time, and I don't have to worry about getting run over by a car. So I do spend a lot of time right off the bat down in the basement on my smart trainer, just spinning away. So I look at it that there's 3 levels of indoor training. To start with is the most basic level. All you need is an exercise bike, a spin bike, or your regular bike and what we call a dumb or a traditional trainer. That's by far the least expensive, easiest way to get into it. If you don't plan on doing a lot of indoor training, or you don't know if you will in the future, it's your most cheapest, most economical way to get into training. You can start going all the way down to about $190 for an introductory trainer. There are trainers out there that are cheaper than that. I'm hesitant to recommend them for a few reasons. One is, ideally with training, you want some way to be able to alter the resistance in the back. Inexpensive trainers either don't allow you the ability to do that, or you have to get on and off your bike to change that resistance. Yes, you can do it with your gears, but there's a limit to what that you're able to do. So at $189, $190 from a company called like Ceres, you can get a magnetic trainer that has a wire that you can attach to your handlebars and change the resistance in the back end with your bike attached to it. And you can go all the way up to a $1,200 Tax Neo Ultimate Smart Trainer. We'll get into those in a little bit. But on the basic level, you've got your exercise bike or a spin bike, your bike on a traditional or a dumb trainer, but you still need some other things. And this is pretty much across the board for be it basic, intermediate, or advanced. I highly recommend a mat, a fan, towels, hydration, and a plan. And we're going to break all those down why as we move forward. Also, optional things you can have is a music or a TV or a computer to watch Netflix or listen to music or whatever it happens to be, a desk to hold extra water bottles, towels, that type of stuff. Um, and then extra towels are almost a must. You are going to sweat. It doesn't matter how many fans you have going, you're going to sweat. So be prepared with hydration and extra towels. The second level is where you've got a bike, but then you start to use what's called a smart trainer. Now, the difference between a smart trainer and a traditional trainer is pretty simple. A traditional trainer, you just basically hook your bike up and you change gears, or there's some system that will alter the resistance based on how hard you're pedaling or how fast you're pedaling. And if it's a magnetic trainer, there's a little lever that changes how much the magnets resist the spin wheel to the thing that's spinning around to give you resistance. Or if it's what's called a fluid trainer, believe it or not, the harder you pedal, the fluid gets thicker and more viscous, giving you more resistance. Um, and so you kind of dictate what goes on as far as your resistance goes. And a smart trainer, the back end or your resistance module is told what to do by something else, be it a program that your coach has designed for you and that's downloaded to a watch like a Garmin, or a head unit like a Garmin, or a Wahoo um, head unit that then tells the back end to change resistance. And in that situation, you don't even have to change gears. The back end just changes how much resistance program. Or if you just simply sit and spin, it will tell you how much power you're putting out. Or another advantage of a smart trainer is that a program like Zwift or Ruvi, Sufferfest, Trainer Road will dictate what that back end does. And so with an intermediate plan, you've got your bike and then what we call one of these smart trainers. And a smart trainer you can get into for around $500-600, which would be a Wahoo Snap, and then around $900 for a Wahoo Kicker or a Tax Flux, are the two that I typically utilize on the majority of the time. The nice thing about a smart trainer is in a sense you can set it and forget it. With a lot of stuff, if you have a preset plan. We're going that a little bit deeper in a minute, that you can just get on your bike and ride, get a really good exercise and not have to think too much. And that has its advantages and disadvantages, which we'll also touch on. Just like in the basic trainer, we still need a mat, towels, hydration, a plan, which is key, and then the optionals, be it music, headphones, a computer to watch TV, or if you're using a program like Zwift, to run your trainer, extra water bottles, extra towels, all those type of things. And then the most advanced is that smart trainer, your bike, and then a training app. And now again, that training app could be Zwift, uh, Trainer Road, Ruvi. There's a ton of them out there. I rode yesterday. I've never seen so many people in the Zwift world in my entire life. It was absolutely amazing. We were riding Richmond UCI course, and it was like when we were going up hills, it was like 15, 20 of us abroad. It was absolutely amazing to see that many people on it. But that's just the world we're in and what's happening right now. So I'm just seeing if we have any questions. Yeah, Cyclops or Ceres. So Cyclops is now changed to Ceres. That they used to be called Cyclops, but the company's kind of changed its basis a little bit. So now it is called Ceres, which is the exact same company as Cyclops. And they make a magnetic trainer, a fluid trainer, and then what used to be called Hammer or the H2 trainers are their smart trainers now. And they're a great company. So we've got those three levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. And it changes in price from, again, ballpark to get a trainer, $200 all the way up to, at the high end, $1,200 for a Tax Neo or a high end Wahoo Kicker. And there's other ones out there. I'm just going to speak on what I'm most familiar with, what most of my athletes use, and what I know how it works and how it integrates with the programming that I use. So why do we need all these different pieces of equipment, or what are they for? Well, you want a mat for a few reasons. And biggest is you're going to sweat. You're going to sweat a lot. So you want a mat underneath you to protect your floor and keep the floor from getting slippery, because especially if you're clipped in on your bike, getting off your bike, there is a propensity, especially in the beginning, to slip. So you want a mat on the floor to be able to absorb all that sweat, but also you want that mat there to be able to keep your floor from getting marked up and keep the bike from moving too much if you're pedaling really, really hard and doing a really hard interval. You want a fan because unlike outside, there's no air rushing over you to cool you off. And without a fan, you're going to overheat quite a bit. A lot of people correlate how much they sweat to how good a workout is. And that's not really the case because you can get a really good workout and not sweat too much by going outside and riding at 30 degrees. The issue is that sweating is just telling you your body's overheating and needs to drop its temperature. And so you need a fan to continually blow to help evaporate that sweat off your body to keep your body cool. One, if not two fans going at all times is key. When you first get on the bike, chances are you're going to be a little chilly, but that's perfectly okay because if you're a little chilly in the beginning, you're going to heat up a lot. If you're comfortable when you first start riding your bike with your fan on, I guarantee it's not that you're going to overheat, but you're going to get too warm. That's going to feel really uncomfortable, and you're not going to want to keep riding. You have to get off, to turn the fan up, or whatever it happens to be. Next are towels. Typically, you're going to want minimally two towels. One is to drape over the front end of your bike. So if you're on a traditional road bike, you want to be that over your horns and over your handlebars. If you're on a tri bike, you want to go over that over your drop bars and your arm pads. Reason being is sweat is very caustic. It's going to eat away at your handlebars. And if you have aluminum handlebars, it's going to chew away at those. And we've had people come into the shop because they do work part-time at C Sports to help pay for my bike habit, where their handlebars are almost destroyed, that they're not rusted away, but corroded away from all the sweat that accumulates. So you want that towel on top of your bars to absorb that sweat that's going to drop off you. And two, you want a towel just to continually wipe your face. Because again, I don't want to belabor a point, you're going to sweat, and you're going to sweat quite a bit. Next is hydration. Because you are going to be sweating a lot, you've got to make sure you're continually restoring those fluids. A 1% drop in hydration adversely affects your ability to perform. So you want to kind of keep your hydration levels at the peak as long as for often as possible. So you want to have hydration on hand. My typical rule of thumb is if it's in a workout that's an hour or under, or it's not super high intensity, it can just be water, just simple water. You don't have to take in excessive calories. But as soon as you go into either high intensity work, be it like VO2 max intervals or really, really high tempo exercise or sessions, or you start to go into that hour and a half and longer realm, you're going to want to add in your typical hydration mixes that you would use if you're riding outside or racing, be it Scratch, Gatorade, Goo, whatever it happens to be as you use. You don't need to bring in a lot of exogenous calories because typically you're not going to be on the bike for quite as long as you would be outside, and I'll address that fact in a little bit. But you do want to make sure you're taking stuff in. So right from the beginning, start drinking your water as soon as you get on a bike and ride, and start to develop a little bit of a hydration habit. And it's good because that can also transition into your race season where you're already used to drinking on a regular basis and not necessarily letting thirst drive your need for hydration. Because if you're thirsty and you wait to drink when you're thirsty, it's almost already too late. So you just get in the habit of every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, whatever it happened to be, take a sip of water. If you're going longer than an hour, you're going to want more than one water bottle. The general rule of thumb is a water bottle an hour. So if you're going to be on the bike for 2 hours, you want at least two water bottles. 3 hours, you want three water bottles. And again, you may mix one with just plain water and one with your hydration and calorie mix, and have those on hand at a desk, table, whatever, that's within easy reach of you being on your trainer at all times. And just get in the habit of using those on a regular basis. Why do you want music or something to watch? Riding your trainer can be pretty boring. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to be locked in a room and just spinning away. Yes, you've got a workout to do, but at the same token, it's not like outside where you have to be on ball all the time. What are cars doing around me? Are the kids running around? Are there dogs? Just enjoying nature, just seeing what's going on around you. You're kind of in a small enclosed space without too much to entertain you. So music and or movies are great. One caveat to that is I can look at my athletes training, and if they're not on a smart trainer in what we call erg mode, I can tell kind of what they're doing. And what I mean by that is I'll see changes in their cadence, their speed, based on what was going on. And then I'll ask them afterwards, I said, you really got engrossed in a movie and kind of forgot what you were doing, right? Because your cadence went way down, your power went down, or all of a sudden their cadence went really high and their heart rate elevated, and said, because you must have been watching a really exciting part of a movie. And inevitably that's what works out. So while you want something there to help kind of spend the time with you while you're training and riding, Don't let it be a big distraction, something that you have to spend a lot of time or really hard concentration on, because it's going to take away from your training event itself. So what I always tell my clients is be present when you have to be present. At rest intervals is when you can be distracted and kind of goof off or not pay as much attention. But when you have to be on to get the most out of that workout. And then finally, a plan. It's really easy to kind of just say, I'm going to go ride my bike and head downstairs and spin, or wherever your trainer happens to be. The problem is the body acclimates to stress very quickly. So in the beginning, when you're first new to indoor training, it may be a little bit challenging, but as you do it, it's going to take more and more stimulus to have that same stress response. So if you don't go in with a plan, just sitting on your bike and spinning is going to have no physiological impetus for your body to get better. It's not going to be stressed to get better. So it could be as planned as simple as I'm going to ride 1 minute really hard and I'm going to ride easy for 3 minutes or whatever it happens to be. But make sure you've got a plan going into it so that you're set and you know what that's going to be. Two is it keeps you interested in what's going on the bike. It's really easy to get distracted again when you're inside. You don't have to worry about the outside world. You don't have to worry about cars cutting you off, what's in the road, holes, sticks, sand. So it's easy to kind of just let your mind drift. Whereas if you have a plan, you've got to focus on that and pay attention to it. It also allows you to figure out what are your limiters and be able to work on those. So in my case, I'm a spinner. I love a cadence of anywhere from 90 to 105. I can get on my bike and go like that all day. I hate low cadence work. I hate grinding, but it affects my ability to climb. So for me, I do a lot of low cadence work because it forces me to get into an uncomfortable position, work on one of my limiters that, particularly here on Cape Cod, it's more difficult to do because we don't have a lot of hills. I practiced for 25 years basically in the Berkshires, so I had tons of climbing that I could do. Um, and so it allows me to really kind of sit and look and focus on what my limiters are and address those limiters. And right now, when our seasons are all kind of on reset, yes, it's a pain in the behind. It's our whole race season has kind of changed and it's not what we thought it was going to be, but it can be a little bit of a good thing in that it allows us to take a step back and really address those things either that we ignored or we didn't have time to work on, and now allows us to find that. Maybe it's just general endurance. Maybe it's getting on the bike and be able to sit on that bike for a prolonged period of time, or high cadence VO2 max, whatever it happens to be, it allows us to have that period of time to get that done. So a plan allows us to be able to do that. Other things you can work on is with a plan would be single leg drills. I had a hip replacement a year and a half ago, so one leg doesn't work quite as well as the other leg. So I'm doing a lot of single leg drill work where I'm really focusing on making a full circle, having a nice smooth pedal stroke, not having the clunks when I go over the top, where I have an imbalance and my muscles aren't working the way I want them to work. So again, it's another limiter that you can really sit down and work on. So it's at this time, it's kind of good to take a step back, reassess your race season as what you want to accomplish, look at what your limiters may be. And if you start indoor training, it's an ideal situation to work on those limiters because, again, you don't have all the other distractions of the outside world. You can really focus on those for a period of time and make one session a week a limiter session where you can really address those. A question that Amy brought up was, how long do I sit on a trainer and what kind of should my plan be? I will never give one of my athletes a session longer than 3.5 hours. And that's an Ironman distance. Reason being is on a trainer, there's no coasting. There's no downhills. There's no stop signs. You are moving the entire time if you so choose. And so you don't get that respite like you would when you're outside riding where you can just cruise for a short period of time or not pedal at all. And so on an indoor trainer, you can truly get more bang for the buck. You can do a lot more in a shorter period of time and still get the exact training stimulus that you would if you were going outside and go for 1.5 times as long. You'll see varying numbers out there. I've seen it as low as 1.65 is hours on a trainer is equivalent to 1 hour outside. No, sorry, 1 hour on the trainer is equivalent to 1.65 hours outside, all the way down to 1.25. Some people don't believe in the difference, but until you really get in and work on it, you'll feel the difference. Be aware that for those people that do train with power, if you've never trained with power inside, chances are your power is going to be less inside than it is outside. The general rule of thumb is about a 10% drop. Nobody has been really able to explain to me why. I have a feeling that it's just the psychological aspect of kind of being locked into a space, not being free to move your bike around, that you're just kind of not quite as free as you would be outside. But pretty much across the board, we see approximately a 10% drop in power. So don't be discouraged. But the same token, you may have to adjust your numbers slightly if you're doing a very structured program to take that into account, so you're getting the physiological stimulus that your coach or the program is attending. Because if you're overshooting by 10%, you could be one or two training zones higher than what the session itself was intended to be. So you got to keep that in mind. And again, I'm more than happy to be a resource to kind of help iron those things out and work on those things. A couple key points to realize when you do start indoor training is to start easy to begin with. It takes a little while to get used to. Um, it is a different stimulus than what you're used to outside. Again, you're going to sweat a lot, so you've got to get in the habit of drinking during and making sure you're hydrating afterwards, and getting used to that concept of continuing to have to move the pedals, that you're not going to have that period of coasting or nice downhill um, work where you can really recover for a prolonged period of time like you would when you're outside. Realize that online there's a myriad of free resources for examples of indoor workouts. Um, Luckily, the world we live in has become very generous in this time, in the sense that people are offering services and different things for us to be able to do to help maintain our race fitness and continue to build on that fitness. So simple things like training, a triathlon magazine, and I know CTS, Carmichael Training Systems, is doing once a week free. Sirius Training with Siri Lynn's Siri, can't remember her last name even though I met her, is giving away once a week or once a day training sessions. So there's tons out there. Just make sure you're picking a session that's appropriate for your skill level and your abilities. Don't overestimate, because it does take a little bit to get used to it. Also realize, if you really kind of want to delve in, everybody's giving stuff away for free. So Zwift is giving at least a month, if not 45 days away for free. Trainer Road, I think, is having a package where you can go for a short period of time. And I know Trainer Road just released Training with Friends, where within the app on your computer, they don't have it for an iPad yet, you can have a group of your friends all ride the same workout together and see each other across your screen, and chat while you're doing the ride, which was just released today. That just came out. So there's a ton of options out there to be able to get different sessions to be able to train. And just like you would regular training, don't get on and do the exact same thing over and over and over and over again, because again, sooner or later your body, actually it's sooner than later, your body acclimates to that. The stress is no longer a stimulus for physiological change, and you're not going to get any faster, stronger, or really see that much of a stimulus from it. So you want to vary your training, change your training as you're moving forward, and always work on doing different things. Um, from that, any questions so far? I don't see anything popping up too much. Things to be looking okay. Hopefully I'm not, oh, wait, my thing wasn't going. Okay, let me see where we're at here. Amy, do we take the wheels off the back trainer? In your case, probably yes. For other people, no. If you're a strong cyclist, the direct mounts with your wheel back off and you mount it to a cog are infinitely better than a wheel on trainer. There's less wheel slip, and the readings, especially if you're using power, are much more accurate. So if you're trying to decide between a non-direct, or which was your wheel still on, or a direct drive where your wheel comes off, and it's in your wheelhouse and affordable, I always recommend to go to a direct drive trainer. You can do a lot more with it, a lot more power resistance. So if you're doing, we're triathletes here, but if you're also doing crits or a lot of climbing or thinking along those where you're having to put out a tremendous amount of power, direct drive units are always better. One thing I forgot to address is, if you are using where you leave your wheel on, a non-direct drive trainer, it's best to take a good racing tire off and put on either a cheap tire that you happen to have at home, or buy a training tire, because it does wear your tire down. And it's really silly to have a $100 tire on the back of your bike that you wear out on your trainer. You don't even get to use it at all during the regular season. Um, okay, let me see what's next here. Yeah, your comment about 5 hours. I don't, me personally as a coach, don't see a benefit. None of my coaches have ever had me train. Now, mind you, I'm a short course, or not short course, I'm a 70.3 guy, but um, all my, even my Ironman, I've never had do. I'll save that long stuff for outside when you can enjoy it on the road. Just it's torture to do that stuff that long inside. Um, can I say the riding apps again? Sure. Um, so probably the number one that everybody knows about is Zwift. The reason I like Zwift, it takes a little bit to get used to. I'm a type A personality. I'm pretty easily distracted, and there's a lot going on in the world of Zwift at any point in time. Thumbs up, there's confetti flying around, there's people passing you, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So it takes a little bit to get used to if you're an individual that's easily distracted. The nice thing is there's a lot of pre-built plans and training sessions already in Zwift. But also, for instance, I'm a Training Peaks coach. I custom build all my athletes' workouts. That workout can be downloaded directly into Zwift. So on that day that they have a site, they just go to Training Peaks custom workout. It pops up and it tells them either what they're supposed to do if they're on a traditional trainer or will control the back end on a smart trainer. The other nice thing with Zwift is that there's what's called meetups, where a bunch of people can set, there has to be one director, so one person that sets up the meetup, and they say, okay, we're going to meet in this world on this course at this time, and they go out for a ride, and there's the option to set it up as quote unquote a no drop ride, that no matter what that person's ability is or the power that they can produce, everybody rides together throughout the entire ride. And you can text and talk to each other through what's called Zwift Companion app throughout the entire ride. So it's almost not like riding outside, but pretty close. There's also the ability to have different communication apps. I'm working on it with my athlete group. The app is called Discord. It's actually a gaming app where you can talk back and forth and have video of people riding set up on a laptop or a separate computer, all on a screen where you're all together while you're riding together. So again, another way to kind of make it a group ride, but still in your own confines of your home. The next one I know a lot about is Trainer Road. I did a lot of Trainer Road riding. Trainer Road is simply blue blocks. It's just squares that the power goes up and down and it tells you what to do. There's nothing fancy. It's not elaborate. Works really well. And they're very innovative. Like I say, they just released the ability to do group rides where you all pick a ride together and you're able to show up and do it. I'm still learning about it. I just literally saw on Facebook today that it got released. I listened to them yesterday and heard mentions of it, but it came out today. Other options are Sufferfest, which was recently purchased by Wahoo. So that's another training app that's out there. Um, there's Ruvi. Ruvi is Ceres or Cyclops's um, training program or trainer base app. The one thing that's a little different with it is it's real world. It has you're literally riding in a real environment. I rode the canals of Ottawa once and at real speed. So if your speed changes or slows down, the video slows down. If you speed up, it speeds up. I just again found that it was a little confusing for me. And with the group effort and being a coach and most people knowing Zwift, I just chose to go to Zwift. I think there's one called Full Gas, FULGUZ, I believe. Don't quote me on that. But Full Gas is free, and it's an interactive training app as well. And there's others, but those are the primary ones. Trainer Road, Zwift, and Sufferfest Wahoo are going to be your most common ones that most people use more than anything else. Okay, let me see here if we got any. Wow, more questions come along. Power meters. Okay. Um, I'm a huge advocate of power meters. Short course, not as big of a deal. For racing, for training, they're extremely valuable. The advantage of a power meter is it is absolute. It is not influenced by extrinsic factors, hills, wind, um, people around you, or intrinsic factors. Are you fatigued? Are you dehydrated? Are you sleepy? What's going on? A watt is a watt, irregardless. And so, as compared to speed or heart rate, whatever you produce, you produce. And so, it makes it really good when I set zones for a client that I don't have to worry about them trying to go in pedal at 20 miles an hour into a 20 mile an hour headwind, but and then have that same 20 mile an hour headwind pushing them and slowing them, going much faster than what they should be, so to speak, if that makes sense. In other words, it's not influence. So if I say I want you to do 200 watts, it doesn't matter whether the wind's behind them or in front of them, they're going to do 200 watts. So at this point, all my athletes that I coach either have a power meter or they have a smart trainer that we do all their training on that's power based. There's three basic types. One is pedals. Two is like your crank arm that your pedal connects to, or in the spider. That's where your gears are in the front, and or a hub base, which is in the wheel. I'm a pedal guy. I like power meters. The reason pedal-based power meters. The reason is I own multiple bikes, and I want to be able to take my power meter and move it from bike to bike to bike. And the only way you can do that is with a pedal base, where you just pop the pedals off. It's 2 minutes and move it to the other bike. Or you could do that with a hub. The problem with a hub is you're restricted to that one wheel. And so for most people that have a hub-based power meter, that's going to be their race wheel. And a lot of times I don't want to use my race wheel in training sessions for fear I'm going to hit a massive pothole and blow it out or whatever. So pedals are much easier. A crank base has the advantage of being nearly indestructible, that they're very strong, very stable, and they're less expensive than a pedal based, or even to a certain extent a hub based system. You can get a four eyes, that's four I based, like a single arm, so let's say a left sided crank arm, for around $400. Four Eyes is a company that a lot of people have never heard of or don't know about, but they invented ANT plus, which is the communication between your heart rate strap and your watch, um, and a lot of the other communication systems that we use on a regular basis in training and racing. They sold that to Garmin. The developer got bored, so he started Four Eyes. So it's a really good, strong, stable base. Two Tour de France teams used it for 2 years, and they're very inexpensive. They're out of Canada, a great company. And there's other ones. Stages is another crank arm based power meter. They had some issues with reliability and consistency. They've gotten much better. Avoid Shimano power based or power meters at all costs. They're extremely inaccurate, very susceptible. Pedals, you could go with Garmin, Asimo, or PowerTap. PowerTap just got bought by SRAM, Zip, so I think we're gonna see some really nice innovations coming with them. And then the last one is the hub base. The hub base is basically indestructible. I still have a hub base power meter that is now, I think, 14 years old, and it still works. It's just in a heavy wheel, so I don't use it anymore. But they're really indestructible. But as I said, the downfall to them is they're restricted to that one wheel. For most of us, that's a race wheel. And I'm very well versed in power, as far as both training and racing, and all the different options that are out there. So if anybody has questions, feel free to email me, and I'll give my email at the end. Any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. So ask about power meters. Karen, I hope that answered your question regarding power meters. For me personally, long course athletes, I will not coach you unless you have a power meter. That's just my personal preference. It's not that I don't like not coaching without a power meter, but I think for long course 70.3 and Ironman, particularly with the courses that a lot of us do here in the Northeast, going over to Lake Placid, some of the stuff down in the Chattanooga and such, where it's really rolling terrain, a power meter is really going to help you from burning the matches that you're going to need later on in that run. For a lot of us that come from more of a cycling background, we want to hammer the bike, but the problem is a bad run typically is not a bad run. A bad run is a poor planned bike, and we typically overcook the bike, thinking that they're going to make up time, and we actually end up losing way more time because we overcooked ourselves and we just don't have it for the run. So the power meter really helps kind of keep everything in check when we go out. It also helps optimize training sessions. It's unbelievable. A lot of my athletes that have gone from either traditional trainers and or just training by feel, to a power meter, they're like, holy cow, now I know what hard is supposed to feel like. A lot of us, when we train, spend far too much time in what we call the gray, kind of hardish. We don't go really, really hard, and we don't go easy. So when we go easy, we should be going a lot easier than what most of us do. When we go hard, we should be going a lot harder than what most of us do. And the nice thing with the power meter is it doesn't lie. And if you have a coach or you look at your numbers, they're going to say, yeah, you did what you did, or no, you went hardish. You've got a lot more in the tank. So that's the reason why I'm a huge advocate of power meters. And again, they've come down in price so much that they're much more affordable for someone that races and trains a lot, that they're really almost invaluable. Let me see, what else do we have here? Is there anything between $100 trainer and $1,000 trainer? I touched on that a little bit. I would say the lowest point I would go would be the Ceres Magneto, which is $189. And the reason being, it has the lever that you can attach to your handlebars to adjust the resistance while you're still on the bike, as opposed to having to get off and flip it up and down. From there, you can go up to a fluid trainer, which is around $350, $400, and that's going to be a Ceres or a Kurt Kinetic type of trainer. And then when you get into the $500 and up range, you could get a Wahoo Snap for around $500. There's the Tax, I believe it's the Flux. That's a wheel-on smart trainer for around the same price, and that's the $500 to $550 is the entry point where you start to get into the beginnings of a smart trainer with a wheel-on type of a smart trainer. And then the price jumps up to something along the lines of a Kicker Core, which is around $900. The Kicker Core is a tamed down version of the original Kicker. The one caveat to that is, remember, it does not come with a cassette. So yeah, you're spending $900 or whatever it happens to be, but you still have the money on buying a cassette, which is going to set you back probably another $50 to $100. So kind of make sure you read the fine print about what's included in it. Some of them you need a block. In other words, you need to be able to lift your front wheel because the trainer's up off the ground. If it doesn't come with a block, you either have to buy the block to do it, or you're stacking telephone books or wood or whatever it happens to be. So make sure when you're looking at those trainers, you're figuring out, yeah, I get the trainer for this price, but what else do I need to make sure that trainer does what I want it to do when I want it to do it? Cassettes, blocks, those type of things. And if you're plan on training a lot inside, like I say, in the summer, even in the summer, my hour higher intensity sessions are always inside the basement. On the weekends, I'll go outside and ride. But very rarely will you'll see me in the summer outside on my bike because it just gets too dangerous. So I would choose. And some of your top pro athletes, Lionel Sanders is a classic example. The year he came second in Kona, which was 3 years ago now, I think. He did not ride his bike outside once except the race. Everything else was done in his basement. So you can get you can become a really good cyclist on a trainer. The one thing you do not get on a trainer is bike handling skills. And those are essential. You need to learn how to make sure you know how to descend correctly, you know how to climb, come out of the saddle, get back into the saddle, stop in a hurry, be able to unclick in a hurry if something pops out in front of you. All those skills still have to be learned and repeated, especially when it comes to race time. And if you're doing a lot of short course stuff, we all know that the bike stuff can get really congested really quick. So we have to make sure that we have those bike handling skills still in our back pocket to be able to do what we need to do to not only to reduce our own risk, but all the people that are at risk around us racing as well. So it's not something where if you're an extremely competent cyclist and you've come from a strong cycling background, you can lean towards the side of less outside riding and more inside. But if you're still learning to handle a bike and how to climb and all those different things, you still have to get outside and practice because you cannot learn that on an indoor trainer at all. It's locked in. You're solid. You're not moving. With that, any other questions? Let's see what else I got here. I got to keep remembering to move this up. Yeah, we all wish stuff was cheaper, Karen. There's a lot of stuff that you might be able to find used. I know Wahoo has a lot of reconditioned stuff right now because each generation, when they release a new generation, a lot of people will trade in because they always want the latest generation. Or the big change that Wahoo came out with this latest generation of their Kicker was they also introduced the Kicker Climb, which basically is something you attach to the front of your bike, and it can elevate or decrease or drop the front of your bike as if you're climbing. The thing is that you have to have an articulating back end where the cassette in your bike attaches to the kicker itself so that it doesn't snap the frame. So they had to customize a new kicker that would allow that to happen. So anybody that had, I think, the second generation had to move up to the third generation if they were going to use a climb. So there was a few climbs that or kickers that came onto the market um, to be able to reprocessed or reconditioned and or to sell. The one thing is that if someone uses their trainer a lot, they can get beat up quite a bit. They're like anything else; they have a finite number of hours. The structure itself is pretty indestructible, but the guts can break down. I know I had when I first started training, I had a Cyclops fluid trainer, and it finally burnt out, and all the fluid leaked out of it. So I had no more resistance. And by the time I was to pay for shipping to get it out back out to Sarah's to get him to repair it and send it back to me, it was cheaper for me to buy a new trainer. I was moving up to a smart trainer anyways. So um, but again, there are tons of options out there and it's just finding what works at your price point. But beware of the inexpensive trainer because it will break down. You're not going to get the same workout. You're going to find that you are just simply spinning and not feeling much. One thing I did totally ignore, and for most of us, because this is a basic intro, would never end up getting on are rollers. Rollers are simply you've got a drum in the front and two drums in the back, and you have to balance and spin at the same time. And it's not as hard as everybody thinks it is, but it is challenging. And for most of us, it's outside of our wheelhouse to be able to do and be comfortable doing. So that's why I typically recommend either one of the traditional or dumb trainers or a smart trainer. Higher end cyclists, like I'm sure like Seamus could probably get on and have no issues. Amy could get on and have no issues. I know Jeff uses them all the time at C Sports. It's not something I'm overly interested in doing. If I want to do that, I'll go outside, ride my bike rather than um, get on that. I just don't have the competency to be able to do that for prolonged periods of time. Any other questions or anything else I can answer for anybody while I'm here? So yes, Eliza mentioned that you can always find the used stuff. Craigslist. I just sold one of my old trainers to actually one of my athletes. Um, Sometimes shops will have stuff that people have traded in or have used as demos within the shop. So there's a bunch of avenues. Unfortunately, right now with what's going on, my guess is a lot of it's been chewed up or bought up pretty quick because a lot of us are just isolated at home. And there is a big push. I understand it to a certain extent of not going out and ride your bike outside because of the danger of if you get in an accident, you're taking away from physicians that should be treating COVID patients. And I understand that, but for our own mental sanity and well-being, sometimes we do need to get outside and enjoy fresh air and spend some time on our bike. Because for me, that's uh, infinitely valuable for my mental health, more so than what I get in the basement. So sometimes we still have to get outside and ride, um, but they are kind of pushing us to reduce it. So there's probably not a lot on the for sale market out there. Um, so in closing. Getting into indoor training is not as expensive as most people think. Well, you may think it's really boring in the beginning. Once you get a plan and get into to a system of how it's going to work, it works out really well. I know for my first Ironman, not my first Ironman, one of my Ironmans that I did, I binge watched The Walking Dead. I hadn't watched it before. It was on Netflix, and I was able to get through a bunch of seasons um, by putting that on. And it's amazing how my cadence would go up, my heart rate would elevate, and power would go up when there was major zombie attackage, and then back off. And I did the same thing with Shameless one year, where I spent a lot of time in the basement. I just watched the entire, uh, I think, 6 seasons of Shameless to pass the time. So it's not as boring as everybody thinks it is. And again, you can get tremendous benefits in a very short period of time on a trainer. I find I can get a heck of a lot more in an hour in my basement than I can going outside and ride at times. And very focused, very specific training. If anybody has any questions, concerns, again, use me as a resource. My email is Coach Ted, so CoachTed at catalystmultisport.life. So again, Coach Ted at catalystmultisport.life. Don't hesitate to reach out and use me as a resource. Ask as many questions you want. I think it's really important for us as a community to to work as a community. I had a lecture with my athletes on Friday. Um, and I said, the good thing about triathlon's a lifestyle. It's not about a single race. It's about the lifestyle in general for most of us, and that we live it 365 days a year. That whether we're racing or not racing, we're still training, most of us. And so that makes it nice that yes, for me, it's just an extended off season. I can go in and really work on and really reestablish my base that I lost after surgery. So there's always a silver lining out there, depending on how you look at it. So for me, being a coach and kind of being pretty well rounded in multiple aspects of not only triathlon but biomechanics and things in general, is that I can help out a lot, and I'm more than happy to work as that resource. The last thing that I will say is that on Friday nights I host a program, a chat with all my athletes. It's just in a Google chat room. I used Google because as a Google Suite member, they allowed us to move up to their most advanced for free. So I can have as many members as I want, as long as I want. Zoom limited me to 40 minutes. And so I wanted to do, in case somebody had tons of questions, I do that every Friday. So if you're interested in joining into a chat with a bunch of other triathletes and hear me kind of ramble on about other subjects, feel free to fire me off an email, and I will email you the link to those chats. I will not spam you. I won't bother you. I won't, other than that, I'll never send anything else to you unless you ask me to. I think hopefully, I don't want to step out of bounds, but both Andy and Kathleen can vouch that that's not the way I work. I'm just here as a resource, and I want to educate people as much as possible, keep us entertained and involved, and focused on that we will race, and we'll race soon. Maybe soon as 2 months, maybe soon as 3 months, but we'll be racing again. And the better we can prepare ourselves to turn that switch on in the race mode, as soon as that time comes, the better off we are. So again, do not hesitate to reach out and ask me any questions whatsoever. I've got a few more questions pop up. Heart rate training indoor, possible? Sure. You can indoor train by heart rate, and you've got to make sure that you're doing a test to establish your baselines. So you have to know what your baseline test is at a certain output, and that's called an FTP test. Even though you're not doing a functional threshold power test, you could do a 20-minute all-out effort after warm up to see what your threshold heart rate is, and then build your training zones based on that, and make sure that you're touching all those zones, not necessarily within a training session, but between training sessions. The one thing that we find, or that I find personally as a coach, with heart rate, the longer you've been training, becomes a little less accurate, because my max heart rate is never going to change. My max heart rate is what my max heart rate is, because I've been training for so long. So it becomes less accurate, but you can always train by heart rate, especially recovery, endurance, tempo, into threshold. Once you get super threshold, then your heart rate kind of becomes irrelevant, because you can't hold it for that long anyways. But you can always train